As a blizzard swept through a small Massachusetts town on a cold January morning, a woman woke up in her boyfriend's home, but he was nowhere to be found. After a night of drinking, she says she dropped off her boyfriend, a Boston police officer, at his coworker's house before driving away in her SUV.
I'm here with your kids. Nobody knows what the you want, pervert.
When her calls and texts to her boyfriend went unanswered that morning, she headed out into the fresh snow with a couple of his friends to find him.
Well, if she brought him there and left him there, where was he? Because he never came in the house.
She didn't have to search long before finding him, barely alive in the snow, right outside the very home she claimed to have left him at.
0 people have said that they saw him enter the home. 0. No one.
At first, it seemed like a tragic accident. Maybe he had slipped or passed out from intoxication in the freezing snow. His friends called 911 as the woman tried to revive him, but he wouldn't make it.
She said, "We drank so much, I don't remember anything from last night."
She said, "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him."
I said, "I hit him." It was preceded by a did and proceeded by a question mark.
She also informed me that she had cracked her taillight.
Days later, Karen Reed would be arrested for the death of her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe. From day one, Karen has stood firm, insisting she's innocent, and was set up by some of the very officers John served alongside.
We know who did it, Steve. We know. And we know who spearheaded this cover-up. You all know.
Do you think your actions impacted the outcome of the trial?
Trooper Proctor was not there and did not plant evidence.
Her first trial ended in a deadlock,
I'm declaring a mistrial in this case.
the jury unable to decide if she was guilty or innocent. Now, as her retrial nears its end,
How are you feeling after today?
I feel very good, thank you.
will Karen Reed finally learn her fate? Welcome to the Vacant Mind. Today, we're taking a look at the case of Karen Reed, who is currently being retried in the death of her boyfriend, John O'Keefe. We'll go over what happened before John's body was found, what happened after, along with Karen's current legal battles in court. But before we dive further into the case, let's take a look at Karen and John's backgrounds. Karen Reed was born in 1980 to her parents, William Bill Reed and Janet Reed. It's not clear exactly where she was born, but she grew up in Taunton, Massachusetts, and Blacksburg, Virginia. She attended Coyle and Cassidy High School, a private Catholic institution in Taunton. Karen earned a bachelor's and master's degree in finance from Bentley University in Waltham, Massachusetts. She worked as a financial analyst at Fidelity Investments starting in 2007 and also served as an adjunct professor at Bentley University. In 2004, Karen met John J. O'Keefe III at a birthday party for his sister, Kristen, in Boston. Karen had stopped by the party with a friend of hers who lived in Braintree, the same small town where John and his family lived.
It was sweet, and I was 24, so that was about the criteria at the time.
Karen and John would date for a short time, but fell out of touch after breaking up. John grew up in Braintree after he was born on December 8, 1975, to his parents, John O'Keefe II and Margaret O'Keefe. After graduating from Braintree High School, John went on to earn a master's degree in criminal justice from the University of Massachusetts Lowell. In October 2005, John joined the Boston Police Department, where he would serve for 16 years before his death. In 2014, John left Boston and moved into a home in Canton, a suburb within the city, where he raised his niece and nephew. Their father had died from a heart attack, within months of their mother passing away from brain cancer.
His sister and his sister's husband had passed away, and he told me, yeah, I have the kids now.
Johnny was there day one. He was unbelievable, making sure that the kids were taken care of.
16 years after they first met, Karen and John would reconnect. In the spring of 2020, John had sparked the conversation, sending Karen a message saying, "Hey, blast from the past, how's things?" The pair quickly rekindled their relationship, with Karen often staying over at John's place. Around the home, she helped care for his niece and nephew, ensuring they stayed on top of their online schooling while she balanced working remotely from home. Around 7:30 p.m. on January 28, 2022, Karen and John stopped by CF McCarthy's, an Irish pub, with a group of friends. Next, they moved to the Waterfall Bar and Grill just before 11 p.m., where they met up with more friends, including Brian Albert, who worked alongside John as a Boston police officer.
Although I didn't know him well, I considered him to be a friend, and our relationship was very, very good. You know, I considered him to be somebody that I could hang out with and have a good time with.
Before Karen and John arrived, Brian had been hanging out at the bar with family, friends, and Brian Higgins, a special agent with the ATF. Karen and Brian Higgins didn't exchange hellos that night, but they had spent a lot of time talking over text recently. Higgins later testified that he had started talking to Karen just weeks earlier after he had honked at her as she was weed whacking outside of John's house. Higgins said she flipped him off at first when she didn't realize who he was, but texted him on January 12th, writing, "Hey Brian, it's the weed whacker." Over the next couple of weeks, Brian Higgins said he exchanged flirtatious texts with Karen.
"You're hot. Are you serious or messing with me?" "No, I'm serious. Feeling is mutual. Is that bad?"
And that she kissed him as they were walking out of John's house, where they had all been watching a Patriots game on January 16th. The pair exchanged dozens of messages, many of them centered around Higgins, asking Karen exactly what she wanted from him. Higgins was single at the time, and he told her that he was looking for something real, but he says her mixed signals left him confused. The texts indicate that Karen went to Brian Higgins' house around 8 p.m. on January 19th, where she stayed for 3 hours. Soon after, Karen appeared to lose interest, with Brian sending texts like, "Haven't heard from you." They stopped texting on January 23rd, just days before they saw each other at the waterfall. When the bar closed around midnight, Brian Albert invited the group back to his home on Fairview Road for a small get-together. Those confirmed to have been at Brian's home include his sister-in-law, Jennifer McCabe, his brother-in-law and Jennifer's husband, Matthew McCabe, and his nephew, Colin McCabe. In her initial statement to police, Karen said she wasn't feeling well, so she dropped John off at Brian Albert's house to meet up with the rest of the group. In later interviews, Karen explained that she actually was uneasy about going to the home.
I said, "Can we make sure we're welcome here? Nobody extended the invite to me. I didn't hear the invite extended to you."
She said she pulled up to Brian's home and waited outside for John to get confirmation that they were welcome that night.
I called him, and he didn't answer. Either we're welcome or we're not, but it shouldn't take you 5 minutes to determine that. And then about 10 minutes went by, and I left.
In later police interviews, Karen explained that she made a 3-point turn and drove off without checking to see if he had made it inside of the home. Records show that Karen's phone connected to Wi-Fi at John's home at 12:36 a.m., indicating she was inside or somewhere nearby. Over the next few hours, she would call him 50 times, leaving him 8 voicemails.
"Where did you get the voicemails from?"
"From John O'Keefe's phone."
At 12:37 a.m., Karen left the first voicemail, saying,
At 12:41:35 a.m., voicemail number 2 is left. Some beeping noises, appears to be a butt dial or accidental call.
At 12:59 a.m., she left him another voicemail, saying,
"John, I'm here with your fucking kids. Nobody knows where the fuck you are, you fucking pervert."
At 1 a.m. 49 seconds, voicemail number 4 is left. It's 1 second called, no sound. That was it.
At 1:11 a.m., when another call went unanswered, she left him another voicemail.
Yeah, it's 1 in the morning. I'm with your fucking niece and nephew. You fucking pervert. You're a fucking pervert.
In a voicemail at 1:18 a.m., Karen said,
John, I'm going home. I cannot babysit your niece. I need to go home. You are fucking using me right now. You're fucking another girl. Kim's sleeping next to me. You're a fucking loser. Fuck yourself.
Meanwhile, back inside Brian Albert's home, he says his guests were enjoying the party, talking amongst themselves, and listening to music.
People were just sitting around, having drinks. Someone had a speaker. Everybody was having a good time.
In the early morning hours, a blizzard hit the area, leaving a blanket of fresh snow in its path. When Karen woke up the next day, she said she realized that John had never made it home. She tried to call him several more times, but they went unanswered.
5:23:26 a.m. Voicemail number 7 is left.
Sometime around 2 a.m., Karen says she fell asleep on John's couch, having never heard back from him. At 5 a.m., Carrie Roberts, a friend of John's, says she woke up to a phone call from a frantic Karen.
The first thing she said was, Carrie, John's dead. And then she hung up.
Carrie would later testify that she tried to call Karen back, but she didn't answer at first. They spoke a second time over the phone, with Karen explaining that John had never come home.
The second time she said, I think something happened to John. I think he got hit by a plow. He didn't come home last night, so I think something happened to him.
I was worried he might have gotten hit by a plow. That was my first thought. It's the only explanation I could think of for why John just disappeared into thin air. He's not where I thought he was, and nobody has seen him.
Carrie agreed to help look for John, claiming that Karen told her she couldn't remember what happened the last time she saw him.
She said, we drank so much, I don't remember anything from last night. And I said, okay, where are you now? She said, I'm driving. I said, you're going to get a DUI, you need to go home. She said, I'm going to drive to your house. Would you drive my car? And I said, yes.
While waiting for Karen to drive over, Carrie sat in her vehicle in the driveway and turned it on, warming it up as the snow furiously swirled outside. She spent the time making calls to the local hospitals John would have been taken to if he had been in an accident, as Karen suggested, but she had no luck. While Carrie said she wasn't very worried at this time, thinking that John could have passed out on someone's couch after a night of drinking, or was somewhere safe as he waited for the storm to pass, she still made a call to the non-emergency line for the Canton Police Department. She asked the officer who answered the call if anyone had been involved in an accident that night, explaining that John had never made it home.
Canton Police Sergeant, good.
Hi, my name is Clary. I'm calling because my friend's boyfriend did not come home last night. They were at Waterfall, and now she is calling me hysterical because she doesn't know where he is. You didn't pick anybody up by the name of John O'Keefe, did you?
John O'Keefe?
Yeah, he's a Boston cop, and he would be on foot, but...
No.
I think he probably got a ride and passed out at someone's house. I don't know, but...
Yeah, but no, we didn't lock anybody up or anything like that. Is the wife home? You said his girlfriend?
It's his girlfriend, yeah. They were out having drinks, and then she left and expected him to come home at some point, and he never did.
Yep. She would have to, call in, come to the station, and talk to us. But, I mean, as of right now, it's more, he just didn't come home last night. Is this common sometimes?
Exactly.
Happen with him?
No, that's why.
But we didn't get any calls, anything like that. Nobody was arrested or anything like that. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you.
All right. No problem. Good luck.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
After waiting for about 8 minutes, Carrie says she got back on the phone with Karen, only to learn that she wasn't actually on her way over.
I said, where are you? I'm waiting. And she said, I'm at Jen's house. And I said, Jen who? And she said, in a cave.
Karen showed up at my house.
How did you know Karen showed up at your house?
I could hear her screaming out front.
But before that, Jennifer McCabe, who had been home only a couple of hours after a get-together at the home of her brother-in-law Brian and her sister woke up to a call from a screaming Karen around 4 a.m. Over the phone, Jennifer told Karen she had seen her outside of that very gathering at the Alberts home.
And then she told me she didn't remember being there. And then she went on to say, she started saying, could I have hit him? Did I hit him? She also informed me that she had cracked her taillight.
After hanging up, Jennifer said she had planned to make some calls of her own to try and find John, but that changed when Karen showed up outside of her home.
My husband came running down the hall and was like, tell her to shut up. She's going to wake up the neighbors. And then I said, I'm just going to go with her. I'm going to go look for John.
Around 5:30 a.m., Carrie pulled up behind Karen's SUV outside of Jen's home. Using Bluetooth, Carrie says she stayed on the phone with Jen and Karen so they could keep talking as they drove both vehicles over to John's house to take a look around. This is when Carrie claims that Karen first pointed out the busted taillight on the passenger side of her SUV.
I pulled in behind her car in Jen's driveway, and at some point Karen said, my taillight, and I looked, and Jen she must have had the brake done because you could see that there was missing taillight.
Over the phone, Carrie says she heard Jen tell Karen she saw her SUV outside of Brian and her sister's home.
Karen said, I left him at Waterfall, and Jen said, no, I saw you pull up in front of my sister's. So then Karen said, we need to go back to your sister's, and I said, no, we're going to go to Meadows, and we're going to drop the car, and we're going to look there, then we'll go there if we don't find him.
Around 5:55 a.m., Karen, Carrie, and Jen arrived at John's home, where they spent a couple minutes looking for him inside and outside. After the quick search turned up empty, the group decided to head over to Brian's place, where Karen said she dropped John off earlier that morning. While leaving John's home, Karen pointed out her cracked taillight to Carrie and Jen, claiming to have damaged it around 5:07 a.m. that morning. A security camera outside the house captured Karen backing the passenger side of her SUV up near John's truck, but it's unclear if the vehicle is actually touched. Karen says she pointed out the damage to Jen and Carrie, but she drove away without ever stopping to look at it.
I had told both Jen and Carrie that I cracked my taillight. I said I just hit my car on top of everything, but I didn't look at the damage. And both women said, it's cracked, it's cracked. Calm down, you cracked your taillight. You're okay, let's go look for John.
However, Carrie alleges that Karen thought that she could have cracked her taillight by hitting something else that morning.
Karen pointed out and said, look, my taillight. And she said, do you think I hit him? And I said, no, I don't think you hit him. What are you talking about? Let's just go find him.
Carrie says that from inside the vehicle, she saw that a piece was missing from the taillight on the passenger side. As Carrie drove the SUV over to Brian's house, she says Karen continued to yell from the back seat as the snow swirled outside.
I told her to shut up several times because I was trying to drive. I couldn't concentrate. I told her to sit back and buckle up because it was bad driving.
After pulling up to Brian's house, Karen saw John lying still in the snow near the front yard.
And I said, he's right there.
Karen jumped out of her vehicle and ran to him as Jennifer called 911.
Where are the blankets? I don't see blankets, Carrie.
911, what's emergency?
Yes, I need someone to come immediately to Fairview Road, Canton, Mass.
What's going on?
There's a guy unresponsive in the snow.
In the snow?
He's passed out, yes. The Albert resident, yes. I just pulled up and found him.
Okay. Fairview?
Fairview, Canton, Mass, yes.
911 is on recorded. Where's your emergency?
I don't know.
Hello?
Yes, I'm sorry. Can you come to Fairview Road in Canton?
Fairview?
Yes, there's a man unresponsive in the snow.
Okay. Is he blue at all?
Yeah, you've got to get here, okay?
Okay. What's going on? Is he face down?
We just flipped him over.
Okay. And who's that in the background? Is that someone related?
Okay, that's his girlfriend. His name is John O'Keefe.
Okay, how old is he?
John is 46 years old.
46. How long has he been outside?
I don't know. I don't know. He got out of the car and
is he breathing?
A couple of hours. Is he Carrie? Is he? I don't know if he's breathing. There are two women trying to do his body heat, and they're hysterical.
Okay, can you just try to ask him? I know it's tough, but we already have the fire department going. They just got to know if he's breathing.
Is he breathing, you guys? No. It doesn't seem to be breathing.
Okay, do they know how to do CPR? Do they want to attempt CPR?
Can you guys, Carrie, can you guys do CPR? No, I guess he's gone.
Okay, they don't feel comfortable doing so?
No, I think he's passed away.
Okay. All right, we got the fire department and the police department on the way. If everyone's declining CPR, then I'll hang up with you, and if anything changes, you can give us a call back. Where are you guys outside?
Oh, right out front. You'll see the car. Oh. I know. I'm on the phone with the ambulance. I know, honey. I know. So, Carrie, you got to get off him, honey. Carrie, you got to get off of him. This is a scene.
You know if there was any alcohol or drugs involved?
They had been out.
They've been out drinking?
Yes, but I'm talking hours ago, maybe. And I think I don't know how long he's been in the snow.
Okay. Is there any bleeding or anything? Maybe he hit his head out?
Yes, possibly. There seems to be bleeding in the face.
Okay, bleeding from the face. All right.
Yes.
And how big's the pool of blood, if there is any?
Something's coming out of his nose, and one of the women is doing CPR.
Okay, one of the women is doing CPR?
Yes, they're both working on him.
All right, if she's doing CPR, just just give us a call back if he becomes responsive, right? But we're on the way.
Okay, thank you.
Karen placed the 8th and final voicemail, which appeared to be a butt dial, during Jen's call to 911. At 6:04 a.m., first responders arrived, rushing John to Good Samaritan Hospital in Brockton, where he was pronounced dead. The medical examiner's report showed that John had several cuts on his right arm, his face, 2 black eyes, skull fractures, and brain bleed. The medical examiner would later rule that hypothermia had been John's cause of death. Back outside Brian's home, the investigation was just beginning, with Massachusetts State Police Trooper Michael D. Proctor taking the lead. Police reported finding pieces of cocktail glass and blood where John's body was, along with pieces of a broken taillight. Investigators say they soon realized the pieces matched Karen's broken taillight. Inside Brian's home, he says he woke up to the news of John's death.
My sister-in-law, Jen, had burst into my room. She was very upset, almost hysterical. She said something to the effect, John is dead.
On February 1st, 2022, Karen was arrested for John's death. The following day, she pleaded not guilty to manslaughter, motor vehicle homicide, and leaving the scene of a collision in the Lower Stoughton District Court. She was released from custody on an $80,000 bail. Her trial wouldn't begin for over 2 years, but Karen's defense team, led by David Yannetti, would reveal their theory in a series of court filings and media statements. Karen's attorneys alleged that John was killed inside Brian's home after she dropped him off that morning, claiming a cover-up by police. Her defense team accused Brian of killing John during a fight before moving his body outside.
I think he walked into the house. I think he was confronted, was likely brought down to the basement. I think that confrontation got physical, and he was beaten. He was beaten to a point of unconsciousness. This was a cover-up, that John was murdered inside that house. His body was placed outside.
They further alleged that Jennifer had helped Brian stage the crime scene outside of his own home. The defense flagged a Google search that they claimed Jennifer made at 2:27 a.m., asking how long to die in cold. Prosecutors argued that the search actually took place at 6:24 a.m., and that the earlier time shown was just when the browser tab was first opened. They explained that sometimes a browser records the time a tab opens separately from when a search is made. The prosecution would then ask the judge to block Karen's lawyers from arguing that someone else killed John during the trial. The judge gave the defense a chance to make their argument through admissible evidence, but the defense was not allowed to paint anyone else as a suspect in the opening statements. In January 2024, letters between Norfolk District Attorney Michael Morrissey and the Department of Justice's General Counsel, confirming that a federal investigation had been opened into his office, were made available to the public. The investigation was centered around the conduct of the Norfolk District Attorney's Office in prosecuting the case. but the reasons have never been fully disclosed. The letters came to light through a public records request that was filed by Boston 25 News in October of 2023. That March, the Massachusetts State Police opened an internal probe into lead investigator Michael Proctor for potentially violating department policy while investigating Karen and John's case. Following the investigation, the Massachusetts State Police Trial Board reported multiple instances of inappropriate behavior by Michael Proctor, including sending what they described as derogatory, defamatory, disparaging, and/or otherwise inappropriate text messages about Karen to his colleagues and family members.
What did you write after you talked about going through the, quote, retarded client's phone?
No nudes so far.
No nudes so far, correct?
Correct.
And you said that to your bosses.
Yes, sir. Like I had said, Mr. Jackson, it was an inappropriate joke.
Sharing sensitive and confidential case information with individuals who don't work in law enforcement, creating an appearance of bias against Karen on behalf of the Boston Police Department, undermining the integrity of the investigation, and finally, consuming alcohol while on duty. On March 12, 2024, Karen's defense team filed a motion to dismiss the case due to the alleged conflicts of interest, first pointing to Proctor's texts and other actions. Next in the motion, Karen's attorneys argued that District Attorney Michael Morrissey made public statements that could have influenced potential jurors. Back in August 2023, Morrissey released a video condemning conspiracy theories related to the case and criticizing those harassing witnesses over the internet.
This will be the first statement of its kind in my dozen years as Norfolk District Attorney. The harassment of witnesses in the murder prosecution of Karen Reed is absolutely baseless. It should be an outrage to any decent person, and it needs to stop. Innuendo is not evidence. False narratives are not evidence.
Karen's lawyers claimed that by dismissing their theory as a conspiracy and painting her supporters as abusive trolls, Morrissey helped fuel bias against her, convicting her in the eyes of the public before the trial could even begin.
Conspiracy theories are not evidence. The idea that multiple police department, EMTs, fire personnel, the medical examiner, and prosecuting agencies are joined in or taken in by a vast conspiracy should be seen for what it is, completely contrary to the evidence and a desperate attempt to reassign guilt.
In the same motion, Karen's attorneys highlighted crash reconstruction experts who said the damage to Karen's SUV was inconsistent with John's injuries. In response to that part of the motion, the prosecution revealed its main piece of evidence, forensic tests showing John's DNA on the bits of broken taillight, which they maintained came from Karen's SUV. On March 26th, the judge denied the defense's motion to dismiss, saying the prosecution's case was supported by extensive evidence, citing the DNA on the taillight and damage to Karen's SUV. The prosecution filed its own motion ahead of the trial, calling for any protesters to be kept back 500 feet from the courthouse throughout the trial. After the American Civil Liberties Union, or ACLU, stepped in, arguing that this request violated free speech rights, the judge reduced the buffer zone to 200 feet, allowing peaceful protests beyond that point. The judge explained the ruling was meant to prevent potential jury bias, as allowing protesters closer to the courthouse might influence jurors. The prosecution also asked that any law enforcement officers attending the trial not wear their uniforms in the courtroom. They argued it could send the wrong message, possibly making it look like police were siding with the prosecution or trying to influence the jury. The judge approved the request, saying the move would help maintain a neutral environment in the courtroom. On April 16th, 2024, Karen's trial began in the Norfolk Superior Court in Dedham, Massachusetts. The prosecution was led by Adam Lally and Laura McLaughlin, with David Yannetti, Alan Jackson, and Elizabeth Little on the defense. On April 28th, the prosecution and the defense presented their opening statements to the jury. The prosecution argued that Karen put her SUV into reverse and hit John on purpose, pointing to the broken pieces of her taillight found near his body and a piece of his hair found on her vehicle. They highlighted previous times they described Karen as getting angry with John, including the voicemails she left him the morning his body was found. To tie their argument up, prosecutors pointed out that multiple witnesses said they heard Karen say, "I hit him." Those witnesses included Carrie and Jennifer, who had helped Karen search for John that morning.
But I can tell you today with 100% clarity, she said, "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him."
And some of the first responders at the scene after his body was found.
So she said, "I hit him." She repeated it. There was a woman standing across from her who I believe at that point said, "You're hysterical, you need to calm down, you're hysterical." She repeated, "I hit him." And there was a police officer who was in that vicinity kind of with us who replied, "You what?" She repeated it one more time.
However, Karen has argued that she was asking if she had hit him, but never said she did.
I said I hit him. It was preceded by a did and proceeded by a question mark. What I thought could have happened was that did I incapacitate him unwittingly, somehow, and then in his drunkenness, passed out?
The defense would officially present the jury its argument that Karen was framed by the Boston Police Department in order to protect Officer Brian Albert, whose home John's body was found outside of, and Brian Higgins. The defense told the jury that someone beat John up inside the home before he was left to die outside in the snow.
She actually positioned herself away from you at the other end of the table on the opposite side in the corner. Did
I don't know.
Did that upset you? That she ignored you or didn't pay attention to you?
I did not feel ignored and didn't upset me at all.
But it bothered you enough to send her a text, didn't it?
No, it was a flirtatious text. It was just, that was it.
It bothered you enough to send her a text that said, well?
Well, it wasn't like that. It was, well. That's it.
The defense played surveillance video from the Waterfall Bar and Grill, where Brian Higgins appears to gesture at John before they left the bar. The video was used to imply a potential conflict between John and Brian that night that later led to a fight inside the home. While on the stand as a prosecution expert, the state medical examiner testified that John's injuries included light cuts to his right arm and a laceration on the back of his head, which were more consistent with falling and hitting the ground than being hit by a vehicle. The state medical examiner acknowledged that the fall could have been caused by John being hit by the SUV. A director of accident reconstruction, who was also a prosecution expert, testified that the damage to Karen's SUV was inconsistent with hitting a human head or an arm. 3 experts would share their theories about the injuries on behalf of the defense, including 2 who said the cuts looked like dog bites. The defense said the possibility of dog bites further pointed to the allegation of a fight breaking out inside of Brian's home, claiming his German Shepherd, Chloe, could have joined in on the attack as the chaos unfolded.
That he owned a large German Shepherd. His words, not mine. A large German Shepherd. He admitted that the dog was at his home on the night John O'Keefe, early morning hours, John O'Keefe was killed. The dog was, quote, not great with strangers, end quote.
Defense attorneys also highlighted the close relationship between the lead investigator, Trooper Proctor, and Brian Albert's family, calling it a conflict of interest. They argued that Proctor could have only focused on evidence pointing to Karen, while ignoring leads that pointed toward his acquaintances inside Brian's home that night. Proctor and Brian Albert have both maintained that they don't know each other that well. The defense also brought up the inappropriate text messages Proctor had been sending his coworkers about Karen while investigating her case.
How did you refer to Ms. Reed in that text exchange where you informed them that you were going through her phone?
I used regrettable language. I said going through his retarded client's phone right now.
The defense also showed the jury photos of red Solo cups and paper grocery bags used to collect evidence outside of Brian Albert's home, saying it showed that the crime scene was processed poorly. Officers admitted that some of the taillight fragments from the scene had been put into the cups, which were then placed into the paper bags, saying they had to improvise due to a lack of proper equipment as the blizzard raged outside. The defense argued that the officers mishandled the taillight on purpose, trying to destroy any trace of the pieces being planted by Proctor in the first place. Surveillance footage showing Karen's SUV in the Sally Port of the Canton Police Department would become the center of a heated debate in the courtroom. The footage appeared to show Trooper Proctor looking at the driver's side of Karen's SUV, which did not have any damage. When the video was played in court, the defense noticed that the number 4 on a wall was flipped, showing that the video had been mirrored. Karen's attorneys called out the fact that Proctor had actually been looking at the passenger side in the video, where the broken taillight was. The defense argued that Proctor could have been taking pieces of the taillight to later frame Karen with, and that they had mirrored the video to make it look like nobody had ever approached that side of the SUV. Investigators explained that the video had been mirrored, possibly while it was being processed or exported, and that it was not done on purpose. The defense also questioned why forensic extractions were not done on Brian Higgins' phone, which he claims to have thrown away sometime in late October or November of 2022 after his number was leaked. Despite a court order being issued on September 30th to preserve his phone, Higgins said he drove to a military base, cut his SIM card in half, and tossed it into the dumpster with his phone after changing his number.
You've destroyed that phone, haven't you?
No, I threw the phone away.
Well, that's destroying the phone, isn't it?
I had every right to do that.
On June 21st, 2024, the prosecution rested its case. 3 days later, the defense would rest its case on June 24th. Both sides delivered their closing arguments before the jury was sent off.
You may now retire and deliberate your verdict.
After 25 hours of deliberation, the jury deadlocked on June 1st, 2024.
Jurors, I am in receipt of your note. Judge Cannoni, despite our commitment to the duty entrusted to us, we find ourselves deeply divided by fundamental differences in our opinions and state of mind. The divergence in our views are not rooted in a lack of understanding or effort, but deeply held convictions that each of us carry, ultimately leading to a point where consensus is unattainable. I'm declaring a mistrial in this case.
They failed. They failed miserably, and they'll continue to fail. No matter how long it takes, no matter how long they keep trying, we will not stop fighting.
Ahead of the second trial, Proctor was fired from the Massachusetts State Police for his behavior during the investigation. On April 4th, 2025, the second trial against Karen began with Hank Brennan, who once served as the defense lawyer for infamous mob boss Whitey Bulger, leading the prosecution.
Ignore speculation, surmise, conjecture. Stay true to the evidence. It will lead you to the truth.
Karen kept her same defense team, but added 2 new attorneys. The defense maintains that Karen is the victim of a vast police conspiracy and was framed, arguing John was fatally beaten by another law enforcement officer at the party and then left outside.
They must prove every element of every charge beyond a reasonable doubt. And they're not going to be able to do that. Not when every piece of this case was handled by a disgraced investigator with a motive to protect his friends, not when the physical evidence contradicts their very theory, not when their own medical examiner won't call this case a homicide based on the exact theory that they're presenting to you.
Some key issues from the first trial, such as the mirrored Sallyport video, were revisited as the defense continued to raise concerns about the investigation's integrity, including potential conflicts of interest involving lead investigator Michael Proctor, who had been fired in the time since the first trial. Meanwhile, the prosecution's accident reconstructionist presented a reenactment to demonstrate how the incident might have occurred.
Could you share with the jury what your opinion is to a reasonable degree of engineering certainty about whether the defendant's Lexus struck Mr. O'Keefe?
Yes, based on the totality of the evidence, DNA, everything I've talked about, that is consistent with that happening. With a reasonable degree of scientific certainty, that is what happened.
The defense criticized this reenactment for leaving out key factors like the vehicle speed, where John was standing, and the snow in the roadway, all of which could significantly affect the plausibility of the prosecution's theory. The prosecution rested its case at the end of May, with the defense currently presenting its witnesses and continuing to challenge the narrative in court. Karen has said that she feels strong about the defense case in her second trial.
I feel very good, thank you.
Regarding testifying, Karen has mixed feelings, saying, "I could get on board with either one. I could feel strongly either way." Her defense team has filed proposed jury instructions that include a section on her right not to testify, which could indicate she will not take the stand. While Karen has never testified so far, the jury has been hearing from her during the retrial through the interviews and an ID documentary she did after the first trial ended. She explained that speaking out through the media is her version of testifying. In court, prosecutors played clips of Karen's interviews for the jury, saying she made comments suggesting that she knew she hit John O'Keefe. They pointed to one interview in which she said,
"So, I thought, could I have run him over? Did he try to get me as I was leaving and I didn't know it? I mean, I've always got the music blasting. It's snowing. I got the wipers going, the heater blasting. Did he come and hit the back of my car and I hit him in the knee and he's drunk and passed out and asphyxiated or something?"
While referring to her attorney, David Yannetti, Karen said,
"And then when I hired David Yannetti, I asked him those questions the night of January 29th. Like, David, what if, I don't know, what if I ran his foot over? Or what if I clipped him in the knee and he passed out?" David said, "Yeah, then you have some element of culpability."
The Karen Reed case remains one of the most complex and controversial legal battles in recent memory. From the tragic death of John O'Keefe to the highly publicized trials, this case has raised serious questions about evidence handling, investigative integrity, and the limits of reasonable doubt. With conflicting witness accounts, disputed forensic evidence, and questions around police conduct, the story continues to unfold in ways that challenge our understanding of justice. Whether Karen is ultimately found guilty or acquitted, the case shines a spotlight on how important it is for investigations to be thorough and transparent. As the legal process moves forward, the hope is for clarity and accountability, not only for those involved, but for an entire community that has been left seeking answers. Thanks for watching, and make sure to subscribe to The Vacant Mind.